Do you really need to memorize vocabulary? Really? I don't think so. We don't need to memorize vocabulary. What we want to use, we want to apply that vocabulary during our conversation. That is why we are memorizing, right? But if we memorize vocabulary, we are unable to use it in our practical life. So there is no sense to memorize. Even in my when I was started in the beginning, when I started my language journey, I used to memorize 5 vocabulary in a single day. But when I had a conversation with somebody, I'm not able to use even a single vocab. So no sense to cut out extra time for memorizing vocabulary. It is totally waste of time. Okay? So today let's talk about how can we apply vocabulary during our conversation. So let me share you just one simple method that I follow and it actually worked for me. Okay? So you don't need to cut out extra time to memorize vocabulary, or you don't need to write down a list of vocabulary. No. What you need to do is you listen, right? Listening practice we do every single day. This is the most convenient and I could say comfortable practice that we can listen anything, we can listen. We can consume because there is no effort, right? That is why we listen all the time. So whenever you are listening or watching a video in English, just focus for 10 minutes. For 10 minutes, you need to start listening attentively. Okay? When they use unfamiliar vocabs, then just pause the video and start repeating that vocabulary 3 to 4 times. Okay? Then play the video. Then, after listening that video, you need to try to recall that vocabulary. What was that vocab? And try to frame 2 to 3 sentences. Okay? Then once you have done this, no need to do anything. Okay? Then what you need to do is entire day, whenever you are getting free time, try to frame sentences here and try to recall the same vocabulary. Okay? You have done this, now you don't need to do anything. Then in the next day, the same process you need to follow. But before following the process, you need to recall the previous day vocabulary in your mind. Yes, what you have, what was that word? And try to frame sentences again. Once you have done with it, then listen to a video and find out one new unfamiliar vocabulary. Yes. In this way, you need to repeat, you need to find out new one, then repeat, then new one. So what will happen that you are recalling one vocabulary maybe, entire day and even in another day again, then another day again. So in this way, you are getting familiar with the vocabulary and your mind somehow start adopting the word ultimately. Then you will see the magic when you are having a conversation with somebody in practical, like in a conversation phone call, you have used the word ultimately. You are using the word ultimately without even getting aware. How? Because you have revised that vocabulary so many times. And once we repeat something, it just ultimately kept in our mind. We don't need to pressure to apply that vocabulary. It just ultimately start programming. Yes, it happens. For example, when you visit first time to your friends or relative home, so the route is quite complex. You feel like, oh my god, how inside the home is, right? First time when you visit, because your mind is not aware about that route. But once you visit 2 to 3 times, your mind ultimately get aware of it. You don't need extra map location or guidance to reach to your friend's home, right? Why? Because this is the power of repetition. Once we repeat something, it ultimately fixed and kept in our mind. In the same way, when you listen that somebody is using the vocabulary and you are listening, then you are trying to fix in your mind, then we are ultimately grasping that vocabulary. But when we memorize, that time we are unable. It takes time, to grasp the vocabulary. But when we see that somebody is using, then we are ultimately start using that vocabulary. It is like a visual memorization. We are memorizing by listening along with visual. So there are two senses are active. So that is the reason when we listen and when we see somebody is using that vocabulary, then we ultimately get remember that vocabulary. That is why you can follow this method. It will definitely help you. Yes. So this is all for this video. I'll catch you tomorrow. Till then, you take care of yourself and don't forget to sort your all negative thoughts and live your life like you are the only king. Okay? Bye bye.